Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Heffler. I am the One System Director of Special Projects, and I'm joined today presenting with my colleague Melissa Castaneda, Integrated District Supports Grants Manager. So we are very excited. A number of you got emails from us yesterday. We have formally released our OnePlan tools and resources, and so we are excited today to be able to have a little bit of a formal launch to be able to make sure y'all have the tools, have an understanding and a fluency in being able to use these. Also, understanding kind of the broader landscape as far as where these tools can fit in with that broader planning process and where you may be able to go to be able to seek out technical support. We will do a very, very brief rehash of our one plan vision, as well as an overview of some of our tools and supports. Before we dive in, a little bit different from last time. This will be a little bit more based on some of that user experience. We'll do a quick walkthrough of how to access those materials and how to engage with those materials. At that point, I will turn things over to my colleague Melissa, who will run us through our path forward as well as some of our next steps. And we have dedicated a big chunk of today's session for a Q&A. Again, our goal today is to make sure that you guys leave having whatever questions you may have answered by the end of this presentation and having a crystal clear understanding so that we can move forward and we can start implementing this one plan draft in the field. Um, so first, we're going to start off just discussing, many of you have seen this slide before. I know some of you have been on calls with Melissa and I in the past. This is our North Star here. We recognize there's a lot of siloed processes. There's a lot of independent sets of requirements that produce a lot of redundancy and take time away from implementation and outcomes-driven practices to really have to take on some administrative redundancy. So our North Star is to create that single submission that is going to meet most, if not all, required planning needs assessment in one single document in one single process. We've heard this from the field that there is a strong want for this to be available so that people can focus on really implementation as opposed to compliance-driven activities and administrative redundancy. To that end, this year we will be launching our phase one of this project. We recognize we're not starting with all 24, but we are starting with one of the largest state requirements as well as one of the largest federal requirements and combining them through. So this includes the Chapter 11 TEC District Improvement Plan, aligned to planning requirements at the district level of the ESSA Every Student Succeeds Act, aligned with the previous work that our grants unit has done in ESSA consolidated entitlements. In order to align these strategically and in order to really create a product that flows logically from one area to another, we have utilized the effective district framework as an organizational structure for the materials we are presenting in our unified planning tool. I do want to take a moment here for those of you who may be new to this call and may be new to EDF as a whole. It is a relatively new endeavor being launched by the agency, and has a little bit less of a footprint than something like a DIP or an ESSA does. If you are not familiar with that, please understand this is not a barrier for entry for anyone. Any sort of effective district framework terminology or nomenclature that we use is implemented in direct, plain language and best practices. So there will be no barrier for entry, regardless of your familiarity with the EDF or with our Texas Strategic Leadership TSL practice. One quick note here, this planning tool is not a replacement for eGrant submissions. So eGrants will still house the ESSA consolidated application, and this material will continue as normal, opening in July, as it has done for the past several years. Our tools will help support creation of this e-grant submission, but it will not be that replacement. E-grants will still house the budget allocations, funding sources, and a formal compliance submission. Um, Before we dive into the tool, we do just want to take a moment and reiterate the value add of we're asking you to pilot something a little bit new, a little bit different. So what is the value of making use of this project? And from our perspective, we see four main value adds of taking this on in this phase one pilot. First and most importantly, this is strategic compliance. So we are meeting both TEC and ESSA statutory requirements, but still doing so in a way that's going to promote high impact strategies, high leverage practices. Additionally, this offers an opportunity for collaboration. This offers an opportunity to get the right people working together to make these happen. We recognize that a school system is a complex ecosystem. It's not one person making all the decisions. And so our tool serves to help work some of that collaboration and that interconnectedness and interdependency. Um, Additionally, it is a huge focus on that strategic planning, connecting through from a needs assessment to diving deeper into a root cause analysis to setting not just long-term goals, but making sure annual efforts are aligning to some of those long-term goals. And also just taking this as multiple pieces of statute, we are building into a single streamlined process. So we are already starting to reduce some of that siloed duplication. One thing I will name here, because we are a state agency, for those of you who participate in this, we may ask for feedback from you. We may ask for information from you. Please understand that even as we launch this, this is not additional compliance. This is not an additional requirement. All tools here are entirely optional for district use or for ESC use in supporting some of these district submissions. We are not requesting any additional formal submissions to review for compliance. If we ask for materials from you, it is simply to fuel our own continuous growth. We have a large appetite to make sure that we can iterate and develop these materials so that we're delivering a product to the state that is going to be the largest value add possible and the largest time saver possible. So if we do ask for materials from you, please understand that's not a gotcha. It's not any kind of a, sneaky way to try and add compliance. It's simply for us to understand better and to understand the landscape. Moving on here, we're going to switch over just a minute here, but I wanted to just do a quick introduction. Many of you on this call, if not all of you, received SharePoint access yesterday afternoon or early this morning. You will receive a folder, and we'll show you that SharePoint in just a moment, with four unique documents here. So we are starting first and primarily our planning tool. This is what we're going to dive into in a moment. We've also provided three additional resource documents. We have a reference copy with sample school system responses to every needs assessment question and every part of the tool. These are not actual district responses. These are hypothetical ways to be able to comprehensively answer these questions. This is here, it says it about a dozen times in this document. This is a reference copy. This is for review. This is not for a cut and paste. We recognize there's a lot of unique needs for every school district, and there are a lot of different ways up the mountaintop. So there is not a single right answer for anything we've provided. However, this may serve as a launch pad for some ideas, and if people may have some understanding concerns, this is a good reference to, to be able to reference. Additionally, we've provided a reference and statute guide. This is going to share out a connection between each component of our tool, each line item question, to show where in statute that is named and why it is a part of the tool to give that direct connection. And finally, we have an FAQ document. We've been running this For a number of months, we've met with a number of ESC stakeholders in our beta testing. I recognize a few faces on this call already. This FAQ represents some of the common questions we've been asked throughout this process and will also serve as a living document. So through events like today and ongoing experiences with this pilot, we will be updating this FAQ just to make sure everybody can stay fully informed and we can continue in a spirit of transparency. From here, I'm going to take just a moment and we're actually going to shift away from this PowerPoint presentation and I'm going to walk through our SharePoint and our OnePlan tool. So, Melissa, if you would be so kind as to put this here in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and walk us through on my screen share. If y'all can bear with me for just a moment, let me go ahead and pull up that different tab. All right, here we go. Melissa, does that look good? Great. Okay, excellent. So, y'all have received in your email, if you have completed our survey, we have sent you a link to our OnePlan Phase 1 Pilot SharePoint folder. Mine's going to look a little bit different from y'all's. Being from TEA, I have access to everybody's folder. For those of you on this call, you will likely only see a single folder here with your individual district or ESC. So please understand that is intentional. That is, to make sure we can maintain security, maintain privacy. This will have just a couple of resources here on this left side. We'll have a copy of our informational webinar video, those of you who attended that on January 14th and 15th, as well as a couple of helpful links here. One being a link to our ongoing weekly office hours. Melissa and or I will be on this Zoom chat every week on Thursdays from 10 to 11. So this is an opportunity. We'll talk a little bit more in depth a bit later. We also have, and we'll talk about this again as well, we'll talk about the Federal Programs Planner as far as timeline expectations or timeline guidance. This is going to be our primary document. From here, I would ask you to please join me. I'm going to make use of this hypothetical sample ISD. This should look just like yours. Every folder here has 4 documents in here. We have the 3 PDFs that are resources, and we have this OnePlan Phase 1 as a Word document. I'm going to right click on, I'm going to click these 3 little dots here, and I'm actually going to open mine in the browser. If you would prefer there to be a desktop version, you are welcome to do that. It will work on either. And this should bring you up to your title page. Melissa and I did some work in customizing these title pages for you. So there are school colors, there's school name, there's a brief logo for each of you. This is fully customizable on your end to use at your discretion. So if there are changes you would like to make here, you are welcome to do that. You are welcome to do that at your convenience. We'll go through just a little bit right here. I just want to share a couple of these areas as far as how you will implement. We have, starting off, we have our table of contents. This allows quick access to any place within the tool. So if you would like to be able to move, we recognize this is not a one and done situation. We recognize that this is not a single, one person opens this document, fills the whole thing out, and then finishes. So in coming back to this, this will allow, if you control click, as seen on the screen, that will bring you to relevant sections here. We'll go through just a little bit as far as how to input. We have an overview section that just gives instructions, gives very similar to what I've been saying for the past 15 minutes or so, as well as some key terms here. We recognize that sometimes terms can be used a little bit differently based on situation, so we wanted to make sure to clarify when we're using specific terms. One thing I will name, there is a lot of nomenclature around LEA versus district versus school system. This document uses school system. That's not to say that there's no validity in those other terms, but you will see school system across this material. Our first input option is under the mission and vision. This is at the district's discretion. If you would like to include your particular mission and vision, you can add this in here. And as you see, it says click or tap here to enter text. These text boxes are available across the document. This is the primary way. Materials are entered. A little bit self-explanatory. Click or tap on it, add in text, and that should be self-explanatory. One quick note on these materials here, as our draft here was intentional not to include too many page breaks. We recognize that as you add in materials, as you are answering questions, document length is going to vary. And given that this is a living document, and given that this will be updated in a variety of ways, um, there may be a situation where you have a break in the middle of a question, or you have a page break somewhere that may just visually look a little bit awkward. If you would like to do so, again, this is 100% at user's discretion. If you would like to insert a page break somewhere just to make it a little more visually appealing, Control Enter will make that happen. Or using the ribbon, if we go to Layout Breaks Page, that will do that same thing. So you do have options to be able to make that. Again, this is going to be dependent on individual responses here. Let me go ahead. I'm sorry. Let me zoom in just a little bit. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Kim, I'm seeing a few messages coming regarding your access. If you could please message Melissa about that, I believe she'll be able to get you set up with a folder. If you could share your email address directly with us, we can go ahead and provide that access for you. Moving through here, we'll move quickly to our needs assessment. As we discussed earlier, our needs assessment is aligned by the six EDF levers here. So we will have individual questions set up with the question itself, the reference as far as whether it is EDF, Texas Education Code, or ESSA statute, as well as recommended data sources. I would like to name for these recommended data sources, as we said a little bit earlier, this is not an explicit requirement that every one of these need to be used. This is not necessarily a ceiling either. If there are additional data sources your district deems appropriate, please feel free to make use of those. These are here as suggestions. These are here as best practices, but please do not interpret this as some kind of a limitation or explicit requirement. Again, we'll have these tap to enter text. This is where you can enter in as needed, manipulate as needed. There are 6 levers through our EDF here. Following our 6 levers, there will be a little bit of a structural change within here. We have a root cause analysis area. This is intentionally left a little bit open-ended. We recognize every district's going to be a little bit unique as far as their own priorities, as far as their own needs. So we've set this up with some flexibility to look deeper into root causes, but open-ended as far as what's the highest leverage, what's going to be that highest leverage priority for districts to be able to review. From here, we will move away from our needs assessment, away from our what are our issues, what are our priorities, into our strategies and into our formal planning. This will be set up just a little bit differently. I'm going to zoom out just a hair on this so that we can see everything. These tables do not necessarily have a text box in them, but they are open for entry and will move dynamically along with your personal entries here. If your priorities are in lockstep with your House Bill 3 goals, some folks may be, some folks may not be. It's not an explicit requirement, but if there is that connection, we have an opportunity here. And then we dive into individual objectives as well as an ESSA crosswalk. So if there is ESSA funding being used for these objectives, you have a checkbox to be able to check on and off as needed, and then open entry for strategies, for initiatives, meaning if there are programs like LIFT or Strong Foundations or Blended Learning that are acting in alignment with these strategies, with these objectives, here's a good place to enter it. As well as a little bit of the who, what, when, where. So what staffing is going to be accountable, what resources will be used, the timeline for this implementation, as well as what's going to be used for formative evaluation for checking the effectiveness of these strategies along the way. One quick note here, this resources source of funds is the opportunity to go a little bit deeper and to be able to go a little bit more thorough than the ESSA crosswalk. So if you would like to be a little bit more specific with title funding that's being used, this is the opportune place to do so. We have two final sections here. Number one is going to be our performance objectives and student group alignment. This is going to have a drop-down menu for both subject area and for student group. So for the subject area, we have listed out many primary subjects here. If your particular performance objective does not fit one of those, we have an other, and we have an open write-in area for that to be included. Additionally, same thing for student groups. We have a list of student groups here. If there is one that is not necessarily included that you would like to discuss that's not on our list, there is an other option here and a write-in entry. We have just a couple of quick questions as our closing. And then one thing I did want to point out, especially for our ESC stakeholders, this is something we heard a lot of from y'all, was making sure on our appendix we had a little bit more alignment here. So first resource we have is our stakeholder checklist. This is used to be able to name who's taking part, who is not. The blank checkboxes show an explicit requirement, meaning if there's a checkbox there, they should be a part of this process per statute. Please, similar to our resource list and similar to our reference copy, thank you, Kelly, I appreciate that. This material here, this is not a limiting factor. So this is not to say that teachers are in any way discouraged from taking part in Title I-C conversations. We do encourage. One of the cornerstones of these materials is making sure this is a collaborative process. So please understand this is not a limitation. This is a floor, not a ceiling for participation in these various initiatives. Additionally, we have here our resource 2. This is brand new. This is our ESSA compliance list. So these are the 13 descriptions required for Title I Part A, laid out in explicit order. Please understand, if you are completing the above sections with fidelity, you have covered this. However, we've had that call for organization, and we've had that call for this structural alignment. So this resource 2 shows all 13 descriptions in order 1 through 13, as well as the direct link. So this is a little bit low fidelity, but we do have a direct bookmark here that will bring you directly to where the response has been put in. So as you can see, level 4 question A correlates directly with description 1. And so that will bookmark you right there to see that response 1 through 13. One quick thing I will add here, there are 2 descriptions. One of them I'll show right here, description 10, where multiple questions are supporting that, where there isn't necessarily an explicit one-to-one match. So We made our good faith effort to make this as direct of a correlation as possible. But in a couple of situations, there wasn't necessarily that one-to-one match where a single response would comprehensively cover. In that case, we do have multiple bookmarks under the OnePlan connection section. We have also added if the district or if the person responsible for this would like to add any additional details, has any additional supporting documents they would like to include. We did include a space for that. This is entirely at the user's discretion here. That is going to conclude one other just little bit at the end here. This is not new. This is all repetitive to what's earlier in the document, but we did organize. If there was a helpful link we provided somewhere earlier in the document, we captured them all under this resource 3 in a direct link for reference for additional support. From here, I'm actually going to pass things over to my colleague Melissa, who's going to talk us through a couple of next steps before we dive into our Q&A.
Thanks, Jeff. Does my screen look okay? Great. Thank you so much. So we're going to go ahead and move forward with, now that you've previewed the tool, and I did try to respond to any questions that were coming in the chat. If you are having any access issues, we also have that dedicated Q&A time, so we'll definitely be able to troubleshoot some of that, just in case I miss any new messages coming in as I'm presenting these next couple of slides. So once again, we want to make this a true working pilot. We are going to definitely rely on you for your insights, feedback, experiences, any pain points that you experience as you're reviewing this tool. So our first ask is that you use and stress test the OnePlan Unified Planning tool. We want to be able to surface any strengths, gaps, and usability issues. So as you're planning with your teams over the spring and summer, if there's any areas that feel intuitive or don't feel intuitive, please feel free to flag that for us. Second, we want to make sure that we have that opportunity for you to share your feedback. So again, that can be informal during the office hours that we plan to have on a weekly basis. Feel free to reach out to us as well via the OnePlan email that was provided. We want to know more than just this worked and this didn't work. So definitely value those real examples. We want to be able to clarify any gaps, any places where there was roadblocks that you may have experienced with the tool. This is our first phase, so we do want to utilize that feedback to make any meaningful changes as we continue to iterate going into future phases of the work. So just another preview here of the overall timeline. As Jeff mentioned, the official pilot launch was yesterday. A majority of you here on the call may have already received access to resources. As we continue to have teams add other collaborators, we are happy to continue to share out those unique links to give access to folks. Today we have our onboarding and office hours introduction. Again, next Thursday, February 5th, is when we have our weekly Q&A. The same link that you used to register today will be the same link for all of the ongoing office hours. We hope to continue those through November 19th. Happy to extend those as needed, and of course, set up any additional touch points in between as needed. And our pilot implementation window will run from now through the end of the year in December. Around December, you will be receiving a feedback survey link, and there we hope to capture your feedback and also set up any optional team discussion invitations. So it'll be an informal chat, a bit of an empathy interview type of format where you can share any additional content and context, and just any additional, I guess, use case scenarios that you may have experienced. And again, we don't want you to feel that the office hours is the only avenue to reach out to us. So please, we are happy to keep that open line of communication. We are available via the OnePlan at ta.texas.gov. email as well and can follow up as needed. And this is just an overall view of the annual planning timeline. One plan is designed to fit naturally with the existing annual planning rhythm. So again, the One Plan pilot launch was yesterday. We know that a majority of districts begin planning around the spring and the summer. And as federal programs team has mentioned and recommended, there is no formal timeline to have the DIP fully drafted per se, but it is recommended that it is what is being used as an input to sort of align with that e-grant submission. We know that it opens in July and is usually submitted in early September. So that would just be our recommendation as well. If you'd like any additional information, as Jeff mentioned, there's that federal programs planner. We also linked it in our SharePoint, and it gives you a little bit more further details into some of those milestones as you plan over the spring and summer in preparation for the e-grants submission as well. And we do want this to be a working document, so we also understand that it'll never fully be finalized per se. So, of course, we encourage teams to revisit and use their formative data to make any necessary changes and adapt their plans as needed. So once again, just want to double click here on the ongoing support that's available. You do have a majority of the resources that you'll need to utilize to use asynchronously within SharePoint. We want to also continue to offer those office hours. If there's any issues with the features, with the setup, with the structure, we are happy to support with that technical support as well. While we would like to provide more direct support, our aim is not necessarily to provide strategic planning advice or coaching support. Most of the work that will be done in terms of what is in the plan itself will be done at the local level, but of course, we're happy to support in any ways that we can. This is rooted in the district's context and local needs. So, again, the samples that we have provided are just for reference, and we understand that every district has their own unique and local needs. So, want to reiterate that as well. And sorry, just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything here in the chat, but I will definitely circle back if there's anything I have missed. We're almost getting close to wrapping up here. So just again, verifying that you do have access, that would be the immediate next step. If there's anyone else you would like to add to your team folder, you can feel free to drop that in the chat or follow up after the call via email. We would just need their name and email address so we can add them to the appropriate folder. This would be a good time to talk to your internal teams about your overall planning timeline. Again, later in the spring, you'll engage in the planning process. We recommend, again, visiting the federal programs planner for reference. Attend office hours as needed. These are very much optional. Please do not feel like you need to attend every office hours. It's at your discretion and your availability and capacity and bandwidth. So we're here to support you as much as we can, and feel free to reach out to us in case any questions or concerns come up as you're navigating the tool. And I think that about covers this portion. We're going to go ahead and pivot to the Q&A and open support time. If you're comfortable coming off mute and have any questions, feel free to do so. Also, we'll go ahead and utilize the chat feature and address any access issues as well.